Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. If you're in the market for a boat, do yourself a favor and talk to the people at Madisonville Marine first. Whether it's a new boat or a pre-owned boat, they provide a great product, a great price, and a great service. There's no better place to buy a boat. Visit my friends at Madisonville Marine this week. All right, let's welcome in our last friend of the day. We have the fifth member of the panel today. We have Ryan Callahan from GoVols247.com. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, for those who don't know it, the SEC and Texas have flirted before. Texas A&M tried to join the SEC in the 1980s. The SEC wanted Texas too. Texas looked at it and scoffed at the academic reputations of the SEC and said no. Texas A&M then tried to get Houston. LSU tried to help them. And that was when Houston was good in football and basketball, but the SEC said, that's not a cultural fit with Houston. That's a big city school. We don't need that. So it didn't happen. Texas has flirted with you before. Texas has laughed at you before. Texas has long viewed itself as Notre Dame. There are people, Arbo and Lofton, the former president of Texas A&M, said it this week that whenever Texas doesn't get their way in a league meeting, they say, well, we'll just go be independent like Notre Dame. They've got this massive ego, bigger than their actual accomplishments of late. They have a tendency to not play nice. The SEC's always been a one-for-all, all-for-one kind of league. That is not Texas. The Southwest Conference was blown up in part because of their oversized influence. The Big 12 became a 10-team league because of them, and now it's going away possibly because of them. Arkansas, Missouri, Texas A&M, Colorado, and Nebraska all left their longtime conferences to get away from Texas. In case you haven't figured it out, I'm not in favor of Texas. I think that's a bad move. Your thoughts, gentlemen. Now, maybe somebody here disagrees with me. They are a national brand. That's all I've read this week is, well, the SEC is going to learn what it's like to deal with Texas. But look at the national brand. I look at it the other way. I'm like, the risk versus reward. I'm not in for the risk of Texas, personally. I'm cool with Oklahoma. Texas ain't that team that I would go get. Your thoughts. Who here likes Texas as the team? Are they the right fit?
Well, let's see. Didn't like expansion to begin with.
Right.
Okay, if you're going to force it, Texas would be way down the list. I mean, Memphis ahead of them? I mean, no Texas.
I don't think culturally it's as good a fit as some teams would be, some other programs would be. I don't think in a lot of ways for what fans are concerned about, it's a very good fit for what the SEC wants. Historically, I think most SEC fans, again, this isn't about the fans, though. It's about money. But if it was about the fans, they'd rather have Clemson, Florida State, someone within the SEC's
North
footprint.
Carolina.
Yeah, somebody that's within the SEC's general footprint more so.
Bring back Georgia
and
Tech.
that culturally kind of fits with everybody else. So I don't think Texas is that. I don't think, for other reasons, Texas is going to be a headache. I think there are a lot of reasons to not love this on the surface. And it's farther away for a lot of SEC schools to travel, too.
One Big 12 source this week said in the media, they asked him how you feel about this, and he said, well, we're pissed as hell at Texas. We're disappointed in Oklahoma. Everybody likes Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not a. They basically are roped into a league where Texas does what it wants, and if they're going to stay alive and make money, they have to follow and do whatever Texas wants. Oklahoma flirted with the SEC a few years ago when Texas A&M first started talking with you in 2010. Then in 2011, it happened with Texas A&M. But Oklahoma, I'm cool. If you told me Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were coming, I'd feel better about that than Texas. And I understand you wouldn't make the same amount of money because Texas is Texas, but you'd also have far fewer headaches, I think. Josh, your thoughts on Texas as the team? And you may not like Oklahoma either, but your thoughts on the two teams they're bringing in?
Yeah, I would still stick with what I said in the last segment, that I'm just against expansion, so that would be against Oklahoma or Oklahoma State or Texas. But Texas would be the biggest issue. One exception to last segment would be, I said even from a media standpoint, we're going to get tons of content thanks to Texas coming to the SEC in terms of the feathers that will be ruffled. But to steal a storyline from last week, I would go horns down to the idea of Texas joining your conference. But you're right. The timing's probably surprising. The idea of this happening and Texas doing it this way is a surprise to nobody.
Right. And if you go do a quick Google search and put in Texas Southwest Conference problems and those kind of things, you can get yourself up to speed on the problems that Texas has caused pretty quickly. I mean, it's not like you're talking about a lot of minor little piddly stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these things are major issues that the Texas legislature gets involved in.
Yeah.
And I know that around here you've had a couple of local legislators, spout off about things. But in Texas, it's serious dadgum business.
Right.
And so if you start reading about these things, you just go, it's everything. It literally is everything. that they pick and pick and pick.
Well, the Big 12 is an even more modern example. They drove themselves into the Big 8. They wanted out of the Southwest Conference because Arkansas fled them. So they were going to get out, and they go to the Big 8, and they take the thing over. And everybody's like, okay, we'll welcome you in as a partner. And they're like, no, we're running it. We're here. The Big 8 was Colorado, Missouri, and Oklahoma for decades and decades and decades. Nebraska, Missouri, and Colorado. Those are the three that fled. Nebraska said, not dealing with Texas. I mean, that was 100%. You can go find the comments.
Right.
No, it's Texas. We're out of here. We're going to Big 10. Colorado, Pac-12. Missouri, here. No one, A&M came here. No one wants Texas. You wonder what happens with the Longhorn Network, because that's another one where they're their own thing. The SEC, you would think, is going to say, well, everybody here is equal, so you don't get your own network. You would think. Do we suddenly believe Texas is going to see it that way? And, we're not going to be equal partners with the 12 teams we're with now, but we'll be equal with Vandy and Mississippi State. Yeah, we'll take you seriously. I just think you're asking for trouble. You're inviting the vampire into the house.
Here's what I worry about too. Those in the short term, almost as much as anything. What do other conferences do in response to this if this goes through? I think you have to look at what's happening with the Big 12. Does that conference implode? Do those teams pair up with the Pac-12 or the Big 10 right away? You might be opening the door for a 20-team conference in response to this for someone to feel like they're matching such a brazen power play by the SEC, and I think that's bad to the point you guys made earlier for all of college sports.
I don't know that Clemson would do it, and I think South Carolina would probably balk if you tried to get Clemson. They make less money in the ACC than Texas does in the Big 12.
Yep.
I would go wave a whole lot of cash at Clemson. I would go wave a whole lot of cash at North Carolina. And we've seen
Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina and Clemson are better right now, but
Right,
sure, Florida
right.
State, big picture. I'd go Kansas. I know that helps you in basketball, but if you're Tennessee in football, you're at least saying, okay, Oklahoma will kill us, but Kansas will be
Well,
ahead.
and you get back to the cultural fit. The one thing that Texas is, big school from a big city, which you just don't have. Which
Vandy.
Clemson fits the culture. Tallahassee fits the culture. All these other
Chapel
places
Hill
do.
fits the culture.
Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
But Texas, okay, now you've got a major market, big city, which lends them to doing exactly what they do, I think, which is come in and say, no.
We know.
No, we want to do it this way.
Yeah. Fit is not something that fits into the conversation.
No. All right, when we come back, we have a member of the panel who used to work covering the Big 12. We'll get his take on Texas, and we'll have Chuck's take on Texas. That should be good. And we'll see what they think of Oklahoma as well. We got much more to come, including what does all this mean for Tennessee? Come on back on the Sports Source.